Hey guys, how are you? Welcome to my podcast. I call it Scaling Without Screaming. This podcast is where peace meets profit. Now, I'm your host, Catherine, the SOP specialist, CEO, legacy builder, and the strategist behind seven-figure operations that actually feel good to run. Now, I help powerhouse founders calm the chaos of their businesses, decode and find the bottlenecks, and scale without ever screaming inside their minds, at the sky, or even a pillow again. Now, if you have ever whispered, this should not be this hard, well, you've come to the right podcast or found the right podcast. Here we blend faith, systems, and psychology. In turn, overwhelm into efficiency and structure, into serious profit and growth, because your business isn't broken. You just need a builder. Now, I'm about ready to tell you about how I became a CEO for the very first time in my life. And it's a blog that I called Dirt to Dynasty. How I became the CEO of a $500,000 orchard without a computer. And my office was a rundown shed. You got to stay and listen to this story. You're going to love it. Well, we were all sitting around one day, and my father said, "Hey, I have a surprise for you, oldest three. Let's go." So we left Seattle, winding our way over to Eastern Washington. Just us and my father's dream. Now, we lived at the time in Bellevue, Washington, was a place where he worked, and my mom was working on her own creative projects, worked for Ace Novelty, she worked for Mattel and worked her way up anyway. And he made this decision all on his own without us helping him. Now, I remember that car ride. It was long, silent, in disbelief that he made a decision without telling any of us. So we were peppered with nervousness. We were kind of laughing, and then we arrived. He said, "Hey, take a look around. Tell me what you think." And I said, "Here's what." He looked at us, swear to God, dead serious, to my brother, my sister, and me. And he said, "This is your future, your legacy, your retirement." I remember it like it was yesterday. That day, my father stood in front of us. The youngest, barely teenagers, the oldest three, we were just in our 20s, just stepping into our own lives. And he said the words that still echo to my spirit today. And I just said it. I bought an orchard. We blinked, we repeated, we gasped, we said, "Oh my God, what did you do?" We looked around and we're thinking, well, isn't orchards supposed to be lush, fruit filled, lots of trees, beautiful land with prosperity just falling off the trees? Now, this is what we envisioned: rows of peaches, apples, cherries, and pears, vibrant and alive, producing. But oh my God, what he drove us to that day was absolutely positively none of that. It was a dusty stretch of ridge out in Yakima, Washington, 4 hours from Seattle. It was even called Orchard Ridge. with maybe 20 straggly pear trees and a handful of Rainier cherries, one of the best. And all you could do is shake your head. Oh my God. And then he said, here's my plan. Here's my vision. This is your legacy. He looked me dead in the face and he said, you are the millionaire of the family. He said this to me. I'm like, a millionaire. I haven't got a pot to piss in. I ain't no millionaire. And he said, this is your legacy, Kitty. And that was my nickname from him. And Wally will build the buildings, and Amber will design the interiors of those buildings. You will build this business to retire even the youngest three. He had always believed in the roles of his kids. He always was attentive and paid attention. He's seen our strengths and our passion from childhood. We grew up in a florist business. What else were you supposed to see? Wally was the hands-on, building things even before high school. Amber had the artist side, just like my mother. She was very clever with designing spaces. She still is today. And me? I was the brains of the family. I was the analyzer, the one that thought things through, the strategic one, the one who could turn a broken system into a money-making, growing machine. That day, standing on what looked like nothing more than neglected strip of dusted land, I became the CEO of Green Valley Orchards. Now, starting from a shed, I'm going to paint this picture for you very clearly. I had no big office, no team, absolutely zero money. And my desk at the time was a wobbly card table that barely stood up in a rundown shed. My chair rocked every time I shifted. I thought it was going to break underneath me. My resources that I had to work with was dirt, rundown houses, and dreams, and my father's belief that we can build a legacy. Now, remember, at this time, there was no internet in that shed or anywhere near anybody. Computers weren't brought into household at the time like they are today. But I had a brain for business. I knew how to write, and a fire in my gut that I could do this. So at the time, I got very strategic and I said, we need an income and we need an income fast, or we're not going to build anything. And I looked at the buildings on the orchard. I looked at my brother Wally and I said, we have to fix these homes up. And he said, let's get to it. So we, hammers in hand, we put these buildings together. There was like 10 of them. And we started renting them out. Now, remember, this took some months to do, but we did it. So we started having a monthly income from these houses. Our second stream of income was the Rainier cherries. You can pull in a pretty good profit with Rainier cherries. At the time, I didn't know this. I learned this, and you will hear it in this podcast. Now, even though that crop was small, I turned those cherries into a brand. I pitched to local markets, festivals, schools, wherever people gathered. I found a way to sell them cherries, and I sold them at the time for $8 for a little tiny half a pound. Anyway, third stream, I learned every single day. I read books from libraries. I called farmers. I interviewed buyers. I got really gritty. I got scrappy. I got extremely smart how to deal with markets, investments. I even got into treetop. Now, over the years, we built that land into a $500,000 a year business. We planted trees. We went from 20 trees to over 5,000 trees. We hired employees. We trained people. I created SOPs before I even knew what an SOP was. We didn't just grow fruit, we grew leaders. Now, I trained seasonal employees, step by step manuals I gave them in their language. I built systems on paper. I tested these systems. I tested these systems with customers and feedback. I updated this every year. I wasn't just managing, I was building my legacy. I became the heart and blood and thriving engine for this orchard. It's called Green Valley Orchards. And then one morning, it was 9:07 in the morning, everything changed. Now, I had taken that orchard from dirt to nothingness, from dirt and nothingness to a thriving business. My father passed away many years later, and by then, the family dynamics had started to shift. My father had previously married another woman and had children by these women, and a half sibling that I barely knew. I found out way too late that they had convinced him to sign my orchard over to them. And this all happened before his passing. This was happened without my knowledge, without warning, and without even a freaking thank you. Now, the sheriff came to my door at 9:07 in the morning, and he said, "Catherine." And I said, "John, what's the matter?" He handed me paperwork, and he said to me, "I'm sorry to tell you, but you guys have to leave the orchard right here and now." He said, "You can't take anything with you. You don't even have time to pack, not even the clothes on your back, because it is property of the orchard." I said, "Can I take my files or my certificates or anything like that?" He said, "You cannot take anything. No plans, not my ledgers, nothing that I had filled out about my systems. Nothing." I stood in my office and I had to leave. I couldn't even take the desk that my brother built for me. Now, when you lose everything, you find what cannot be taken from you. Now, I may have lost the orchard, but the one dang thing that I did not lose and what I built was my mind, my strategies, and the gift and the love for a business. Now, years later, many, many years later, I stand here today talking to you, stronger, wiser, sharper, and more driven than ever to take a business and build it from chaos to clarity. And I'm not. I get sad at this point. I do. I lose train of thought and everything goes out the window. But right now, I'd like to tell you that I am building my own empire and it has my name on it. Nobody can take it away from me. My legacy wasn't in the orchard. My legacy was in the systems that I built. My vision, my ability to turn chaos into major cash flow, from nothing to cash flow. And now today, I'm a CEO of my own company. I help 7-figure founders do exactly that. I step into their business like I stepped on that orchard that very day. Sorry, with their disorganized, scattered, and broken businesses. And I turned them into incredible lean machines with structure, with strategy, and with soul. Because I lived through the fall and I have built my way back from zero. So when someone tells me their business is too messy to fix, I always look at them and smile and say, you just need an orchard mentality. And I tell them, are you ready to get to work? Now remember, again, I'll tell you this, your business isn't broken. It just needs a builder. If you've been running your company from chaos and putting out fires instead of building your legacy, it's time. Let me help you decode the madness and rebuild with clarity, peace, and profit. So if you are ready to take your business from gap to gold, visit my website at thesopspecialist.com and book your clarity session. Now it's about 60 minutes. Could be less, but we gain a lot of clarity in that 60 minutes. So remember, calm down, decode it, and profit. My name is Catherine. I am the SOP specialist, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.